Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. Issues at hand. Issues at hand.
A very good morning. Once again, we welcome you to Church of Uganda Family TV. This is Issues at Hand. Edwin Austin Mukalas is my name. And of course, today we are talking about something very, very pertinent, something at the heart, that is at the heart of everyone, whether you're Ugandan or not. I mean, we all love food. We all want food. But having health food is also something different. So eating is one thing, but eating healthy food is the other. Now, today we are talking about, of course, why we should actually pay attention to the World Food Day, which is coming on the 16th of October, this very week. Today is the 13th, and of course on the 16th, is the World Food Day. But this year's theme is hand in hand, better food, and of course better future. So we all want food, we all want to eat, but the big question is, what do you eat? And what you eat has a very big impact, especially on your health. Today we are seeing a lot of NCDs increasing among children, especially as we are growing up. We used to think that these were these were diseases for the aged people. It's funny that today even the young ones are suffering from NCDs, but partly because of what we feed them on or what they eat. As a parent, what is your role in this, especially monitoring what your child eats? However, before you monitor what your child eats, do you monitor what you eat? Do you pay attention to what you eat? I mean, those are all the things we are discussing this morning. With us is Bernard Bwambale from Consent and of course a Food Rights Coalition. Ben, it's a pleasure having you once again.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to come back home.
It's been a while.
Yeah, sure. But nevertheless, we've been serving.
Sure, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
How is Consent?
All is well.
Food Rights Coalition.
All is well. We are pushing on well, and I think we shall continuously form this country around food areas. So at Consent and the Food Safety Coalition, we are doing our best really to make sure that each one of you understands what your rights are and what you're supposed to do, especially in protecting the food that you are actually consuming out there. So I must say that we are doing very well. Of course, together with other partners out there, we are doing a great work, I have to say, including the government, of course. Government is also trying to push to make sure that people have access to safe and nutritious food. Yeah, so we are grateful that we shall keep on reaching out to our people. And of course, our listeners out there, you need to keep learning, unlearning, and relearning.
Learning, unlearning, and relearning. Yeah. Now, starting off from what safe food is, because most of us don't really mind about whether what I'm eating is safe or not. We just eat.
Yes.
You know, we're in a season where we have a lot of events, functions, wedding after wedding, introduction after introduction.
Yeah, I see you there.
And then we are getting into the festive season as well, where we shall have very many days coming up. And I mean, we just eat whatever we find on the menu, whatever. Sure. I mean, we just eat. But what do you call safe food?
Now, I mean, it's I don't know how you would call it, but I have to say that food is everything. You have to start there. Food is just everything. Anything liquid or solid that you take into your body, the purpose should be one that is going to nourish your body. Anything that is not nourishing your body ceases to be food in our definition academically. If you eat anything but is not contributing to your nutritional status, or it's not contributing to the nutrients that are going to build your body, then you're not eating. And the reasons to why we eat food are only three. Others, it is your own business. We are eating for majorly three things. You're eating food to get energy. So have I eaten food that provides me the energy? What now in the lower classes used to call carbohydrates or energy-giving food. Secondly, you're eating energy to either grow or repair your body cells. So some of you have stopped growing, but you're trying to maintain what has been built. So you're thinking about any food that I've eaten, is it contributing to growth or repair or maintenance of my body? Yeah, so those are now what we used to call the grow foods. Those are basically the proteins, talking about eggs, milk, beans, meat, fish. those ones. And then lastly, you're eating, you know our body is susceptible to disease. You must be knowing that. Yeah. So a lot of microorganisms and whatever. So your body is susceptible to getting sick. But the same body has a mechanism to actually prevent you from getting sick. So one of the reasons why you would eat is to provide your body with immunity or immune boosters, food that is going to support your body to fight off disease. So those are what we used to call protective foods, so vegetables and fruits. So every time you're eating food, think about those three. Anything beyond that, social issues and whatever, those ones are others. But every time you're serving food on your plate, is it giving me energy? And energy to do what? Energy to do work. This business of just eating, then you are swinging in your offices doesn't apply. Secondly, is this food actually building my body? Thirdly, is it contributing to protecting my body? In other words, is it contributing to boosting my body immunity to fight off infection? Those are the only reasons why you would be eating food. These other things of going to the party and you're just enjoying, those are your own things.
There is something.
Yes.
There is someone who told us that while you eat food, especially breakfast, eat like a king. Why? Because especially people who sit in office, that they burn a lot of calories in office, and so they need to eat a lot. They need to have a very heavy breakfast. Now, when you say that you eat and swing in your office, now that somehow brings a
contradiction.
A contradiction.
Yes.
Exactly.
So you realize that food, energy-giving food, is supposed to help you do work. Okay? So if you have, let's say you've served heavy breakfast, and then you just leave your room, you enter a car. You don't spend calories to drive. Someone is driving you, for instance. Talk about our MPs. Someone is driving them, but I've just had a very big breakfast. They reach office, they serve again the flasks. You keep seeing them. So literally, this person is concentrating on his chair, is listening in, is in those sorts of meetings up to the end of the day. And then lunch comes, they go for another heavy lunch. Evening comes, they go for another heavy evening. After office, they go to, the drink ups. So at the end of the day, we eat a lot of food, but we do less. So the issue is, when we said eat heavy breakfast, the mind is that you're going to work. So it means that you have to prepare your body for the work that you're going to undertake. So sitting, for instance, I use very minimal calories. But then, if you look at our people in the villages or our farmers, they will eat heavy food and they go and use it. They go and spend it. They go and dig. They go and work. And so the food is being utilized for the purpose for which they ate it. So that is different for us in the Kampala, in the urban, where people eat a lot of carbohydrates and more so junk. I have to even to say that, more so junk. And then we do less. So we keep sitting in taxis, in planes, in offices. Even when someone wants to get his jacket from right there, they just pull a chair there. So which calorie are you using? You want to turn to your cabin, you just do this. So I mean, there is minimal working against overeating. And I think I'll throw a little bit more light there, because you realize that in globally, we have 821 million people who sleep hungry. Talking about millions. 821 million. That is the current statistic from FAO. But we also have 2.1 billion people who have overeaten, and they are getting even sick because of eating. You see the controversy there. So you have 800 million people sleeping hungry, but you have 2.1 billion eating too much and throwing away food. So there is a whole discrepancy. Now, for those who are sleeping hungry, it simply means that we are introducing them to malnutrition, and specifically undernutrition. Okay? So you're talking about wasting, for instance. You're talking about stunted growth. You're talking about micronutrient deficiencies. You've heard that children don't have blood. But where does blood come from? Food. Yeah, but we have those cases. Now, currently, we even have a new type of diabetes called diabetes type 5, which is associated with undernutrition. Now, these 821 million people who sleep hungry, they are susceptible to all those conditions. Now, on the other hand, we have the 2.1 billion who are overeating and throwing away food. Surprisingly, the amount of food they throw away is sufficient to feed the 821 million who sleep hungry 4 times. Can you imagine this kind of thing? So the people who are throwing away food, or the food that we are wasting or losing, can feed these hungry people 4 times. So this is
the food we throw away can feed these for 4 days.
Exactly. If each one of them had a meal, 3 meals in a day, we would serve them for 4 extra days. That is the amount of food we just lose by just throwing away. You serve food, you don't finish it on the plate. You go to a restaurant, they serve you food, and you look at it and you just go away. That food we lose, that food we waste, can feed 821 million hungry people 4 times.
Wow.
So that is where the mess is. Now, because of this overeating, we see that now we are in a dilemma of people getting obese, getting overweight. And when people start getting overweight or obese, we start seeing a rise in the non-communicable diseases. And I have to add this word, diet-related non-communicable diseases. Diabetes, hypertension, no, let me just say cardiovascular diseases. So when you talk about cardiovascular diseases, you are talking about diseases that affect the heart, but also those that affect the vessels that take blood to different body organs. Now, if the vessels are already affected, imagine a vessel that is taking blood to the heart is affected. You're likely to have heart failure, heart disease, heart attack, stroke. Imagine it is the vessel going to the brain. You can have a brain damage, or even you can just die. Imagine a vessel that is taking blood to the liver. So you're going to liver disease, liver failure, Imagine the vessel that is taking blood to the legs. You have numbness and all those other things. Imagine the vessel taking blood to the eyes, to the ears, to the kidney. So all of those body organs can just be affected by cardiovascular diseases. And then talk about diabetes and others. Now, in Uganda, for instance, 33% to 40% of Ugandans who die every year, they die because of a non-communicable disease. Food, you see, there is a problem there. So because we are eating junk, we are eating highly processed, actually ultra-processed foods that are very high in sugar, that are very high in salt, that are very high in fat. People will have these complications, and people will end up dying. Now, given all these problems that I've just mentioned above, it brings us now to focus on one of the reasons why we commemorate the World Food Day.
Exactly.
So the reasons are, can we create awareness about food? Can we put our hands together to make sure that we preserve the food, our indigenous food? Where did it go? It is now the time to reflect as partners, as stakeholders, as actors in the food system. How do we work together to make sure that every person has access to safe, nutritious, and healthy food? I have to add those words very carefully. You can have safe food, but when it is not healthy. So we are talking about each and every person, whether a child, whether adult, whether male or female, everybody must have access to safe, nutritious, and healthy food. But all this food which is safe, nutritious, and healthy must be also adequate. Now, on such a day, World Food Day, we look at how do we ensure that the population has access to this kind of food that we are talking about. Food that is adequate, food that is safe, food that is nutritious, and food that is healthy. When that happens, it means now we start thinking about the future. That's why you see the theme of the World Food Day. We're talking about hand in hand. The media working with us, the technocrats working with the farmers working with the processors, all of us, government working with all of us, providing a suitable environment for us to work to make sure that we deliver safe, nutritious, healthy, and adequate food to everybody out there. So that is the theme, basically.
Okay, as we still talk about this, you brought in something very, very important. You talked about indigenous food.
Yeah.
There was some time back, a few months ago,
yes,
where one of the publications actually came out and said it was one of the leading, these indigenous foods that you're talking about,
yes,
were partly the cause of, I think, increasing numbers of diabetes.
Yes.
And this sparked, everyone was shocked. in the world, because now where are we going to run if now the indigenous foods are causing diabetes?
Yes.
Yet we are running away from processed foods.
Yeah,
And now
yeah.
there was, I think, a
lot of
panic
controversy.
and a controversy.
Yes.
But talking about indigenous foods here, maybe someone would really want to know how do you take the indigenous foods? Because we see a lot of technology and value addition, where, for example, someone wants to take yams, and then there is yam powder, which they will mingle and then probably take that. Or maybe if they want to take matoke, there is a powder for this. So maybe in what sense do we now present indigenous foods?
Having indigenous food does not take away processing.
Okay.
And processing doesn't take away indigenous food.
Okay.
So the issue is that our indigenous food, our local food, I would say local indigenous, I think those are the same words. Those foods are more healthy than whatever you'd ever think about. And that's why if you go to Europe, for instance, our indigenous food is more costly in Europe than you would ever imagine. The junk you eat here, which is quite costly, is cheaper the other side. You get it? So our indigenous food, we can add value to our indigenous food. But what is happening is, every time you highly processed food, because also processing has stages, about 4 stages. We have minimally processed food. We have processed foods. We have ultra processed food. That is almost over 4. So there are different ranges of food processing. So the higher you go, the higher you lose nutrients, or the higher you process, the higher you lose the nutritive composition of food. Let me just give you a simple example. You've seen that we eat posho a lot in our schools.
Yes.
Now, the more you process posho to number 1, you know number 1, is it number 1, number 3?
Number 1.
The one which is so light that if you touch, it can even
Number
go
1.
off. Yeah. Now that one is less nutritious than number 3. That is why you see.
And yet it's what the parents want their children to.
Unfortunately, because we don't know. Because look here, we get bran, bran from the maize, and we give it to the animals, and the animals look healthier than human beings. I mean, so that is where the thing is. But also, every time you do highly processed foods, you are doing 2 things. One, many of the highly processed foods lose taste. So what you're going to do is to improve the taste of this food and attractiveness. So you'll add sugar, or you'll add fat, or you'll add salt, so that they become more palatable. And in fact, they become irresistibly palatable, that you cannot resist taking in, for instance, a soda. But a soda, you know that this is probably corn syrup, which they just got from corn, and then they made a syrup, and then, you know, some sort of sugar and whatever. So you see people running for the sweeter things. But remember, this is just added to attract the consumer. You get it? So the higher you process, the higher you lose the nutrients. Now, in the theme of the World Food Day, if we bring it in that context, we are saying, can the food processors process food and make sure that we retain the nutrients? Because the technology exists. So why don't we process food, but we retain the nutrients in the food? Because that's what you want the consumer to actually take. That's why you will see someone can have diabetes, and they tell you, don't eat posho, but eat maize. But now maize and posho, humanly you would think they are the same. But in fact, maize is more nutritious than posho. You get the magic. So in the World Food Day context, we are saying that, okay, can we speak nicely to the processors? Tell them these realities. They work with us, add value to the food, but the food should remain nutritious and healthy. So the same context, we are saying, okay, can we use food grade processing equipment to process this food? Because you realize that now the processing units we have, most of the equipment are not food grade. Go to Katwe and see what I'm talking about. Most of them are made of iron, and yet we're supposed to make this equipment from steel. So the question here is, how do we work hand in hand with the processors, for instance, to make sure that we have technology that is food grade? That when we are processing food without losing the nutrients. Or if we lost the nutrients, how do we ensure that these nutrients are put back to the food? That is the conversation on the World Food Day. And that's why you see the word hand in hand. How do we technocrats provide this information to the processor to make sure that they process food without losing nutrients? If you are doing ultra processed foods, let's say you are doing soda, we can improve soda. We can give people products that are less in sugar, that are less in fat, that are less in salt. We just need to reformulate our food products on the market so that our consumer down there has access to a safe, nutritious, and healthy food. And so that now that's the working hand in hand. How do we work with these different food actors to make sure that the food remains food? Food has to remain food. In fact,
can food turn into something else?
Yes, many times. Most of the food we are eating might even be poison.
How?
Yes, because now look here. If we tell you that food is causing disease, why would food cause disease, for instance?
And how does food cause disease?
Okay. Let us go slowly, because also in our theme you see there is a word for better future.
Yes.
So we cannot have a better future if people have not eaten well here. So this is, let us go back to the food safety component that we discussed last time. So you go and plant your food, and then at the time of harvesting, you dry it on a tarmac road. So when you dry this food on a tarmac road, and then the sunny day, the tarmac is heated, but there is food. So tarmac starts oozing out, starts going into the food. So what was food initially is no longer food. It is food plus compounds that are not supposed to be eaten by human beings.
Where cassava is dried on iron sheets.
Exactly. We have seen so many areas where cassava is dried, not just iron sheets, on rusted iron sheets. Okay. We have seen people cooking food and they're using transformer oil.
Yeah.
We have seen people cooking food, chips and whatever on the streets and they're using engine oil. We have seen people preparing for us food, but in this food they have added medicines. Talk about preserving meat and fish and whatever, using formaldehyde or formalin. Yeah, we've seen people using even paracetamol in cooking food. We've seen people using ARVs in feeding chicken. We've seen, so all of these, are they still food? Certainly not. They have moved away from the state of providing health to providing disease to the people.
Well, Bernard, at that point, we are taking a short commercial break. When we return, we shall start from there now, because this is now a heated concern.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Issues at hand. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. Issues at hand.
Welcome back from the break. We are looking at the rationale of the World Food Day. Of course, these are days that sometimes go silently.
Yeah, sure.
And people don't even know why it is really important to talk about the World Food Day. And why should we talk about, why should we amplify our voices on such a day when we get to food? Someone was telling me that they didn't know that food has rights as well. And true, food too has rights, as you have your rights as a human being. But before the break, we're actually talking about safety food and how food turns into poison, things like that, and they want us to complete that.
You see, issues of food safety are critical for all of us. These food safety issues, I have talked about them over and over, and my colleagues, even here, we've talked about them, and we shall not grow tired, by the way. You know very well that currently, as I mentioned in the previous show, that we acknowledge climate change, for instance. It's a very big, complex issue. It can lead to losses of food and whatever. And so scientists, of course, have come up with pesticides, fungicides to help us curbing these problems. But also we know very well that, for instance, in our country, we still have what we call highly hazardous pesticides. Highly hazardous pesticides. The word is highly hazardous. They're still on the market, and they are the majority that we are actually using. And then, why on earth would you allow your country, for instance, to import highly hazardous pesticides that are not even used in the countries of origin? We are talking about more than 60% of our chemicals in this country cannot be used in the countries where they are made or where they come from. Yes. And no one can challenge me on that because we have all the evidence around it. I have also talked with the ministry people. They know about it. So we wonder why, instead of improving the safety of the food, we are not saying don't have pesticides, but have people been, for instance, educated about how to handle them? Secondly, the law is clear in Uganda that we must have pesticide applicators. That is the law. And these applicators must be trained by the Ministry of Agriculture. But go to our villages, everyone is now an applicator.
Of course.
And secondly,
starting from the child,
everybody,
to the father.
Now, you've gone to those agrochemical shops. You find a pregnant mother feeding or eating from inside there. You find her feeding her child inside that. You find this mother even measuring the chemical. You give me 1 liter, they just measure. You give me 500 grams, but the law doesn't allow such. Now the question is, who is to blame? We don't want to have blames. The theme of the World Food Day says hand in hand. Can the ministry, can we work hand in hand with the ministry to improve the way people are handling these pesticides? Can we regulate the entry of highly hazardous pesticides in our country, for instance? Because our people out there, for them, what they have access to is what they will buy. This science, they don't understand it. So why do we allow them to be exposed by allowing highly hazardous pesticides, which are not allowed in their countries of origin, to come to our country? You are actually mortgaging your people. That's what it would mean. So at the end of the day, if you go to our markets here, you find tomatoes, vegetables, fruits endowed with white substance. Mancozeb, is that still food? And mancozeb, for instance, is a highly hazardous molecule. It has been banned in the countries where it comes from. And for us, it's what we are using to preserve tomatoes in a market. So food, a tomato which is highly nutritious with vitamin C, with vitamin A, with lycopene and whatever, very important for our bodies, but we eat it alongside mancozeb. So food can turn out to be actually a poison because our regulations are not being adhered to, or our leaders are not doing sufficiently what they're supposed to do. So working hand in hand would mean, can we work with government to regulate the food environment? Can we work with the government to make sure that the laws, the policies, the international policy frameworks that we have are actually working? This is all we are asking for. Imagine water is part of food. You cannot cook food unless you use water.
Yeah.
But our water, we have all the evidence that these molecules have also contaminated our water sources. So just imagine if you have a highly hazardous molecule in the water source, the person is going to cook using this water, it's already contaminated. So I mean, it's a whole mess that we can have food as long as it's not safe, it is actually not food, and so it can cause death to our people. So working hand in hand would mean the farmer should work with the ministry, with extension workers to understand the dynamics in production. In fact, this theme is supposed to be aligned to the food system. Pre-production, before we produce, there are people handling agrochemicals, agro input dealers, people handling seed and whatever. So how are we managing them? How are we working with them? How are we promoting their work? How are we making sure that they work according to the law? You know, that is pre-farm. So what we call before farm. Then at the farm level, how is the farmer producing? You've had farmers complain that now they actually cultivate and then the seeds are not germinating. And then you ask yourself what went wrong in the system. So here now we are trying to say, can we work hand in hand with the scientists that are actually making seed, those who are making agro inputs, to make sure that the farmer who has spent a lot of money purchasing these items does not go to loss because your things are not germinating. So if we don't have a seed that is germinating, it means the farmer is not going to produce food. It means the consumer at the end is not going to receive the food. We go back to food insecurity. And this is what we're talking about. Can we work together to make sure everything we are providing in the value chain, one, is standard, number two, is safe, and the food remains nutritious and healthy up to the end. In the middle here, we have a farmer who is producing, but who is reaching out to the farmer? Are farmers having access to credit to produce sufficient food? Are they having capacity on how to do crop rotation, on how to manage pests, on how do they have that? Away from the farmer, we have these guys, middlemen. Now, 2 weeks ago, I was at the border, and we learned that while the farmer may produce food safely, the middleman in here can come and actually contaminate the food because they want to keep it longer and whatever, so they contaminate it. So the question is, you've seen guys who add sand and stones in food when they're taking it to the market. Yes. We learned also that the middlemen are doing that as well. The farmer has produced quality food. Then this middleman or the trader is actually contaminating the food with the stones, with the sand, with the feathers, with whatever sorts of stuff. Now, how are we working hand in hand with these middlemen to make sure they maintain the quality of the food before it can actually reach the consumer? So all of these come in handy in this theme that we are actually discussing. So it's an issue of not leaving anyone behind in ensuring that we have safe, adequate, and nutritious food. So when you're discussing this theme, that is the context. So if you're looking at pre-production up to consumption, all those things have to play hand. We have to factor them in. Of course, in the middle there we have the parliament, for instance. One would think, how is the parliament now supposed to be in the food matters? I want to guarantee you that in Parliament we have so many committees that deal with food. One of them would be the Parliamentary Alliance on Food and Nutrition Security. Can you imagine? It's a committee there. Not a committee, but an alliance. But also we have a committee on agriculture. We have, so committees are there. We even have a chemical control board for Uganda. Those who are regulating the chemicals for agriculture. We have them. So how are we working with? Functional? They are supposed to be. I don't, but okay, I think they are serving. So the issue is, how do we work with those government agencies and departments and whatever to improve food and nutrition security for our people? We have a whole NARO. You've heard about NARO. It's a whole research entity for food. So we need to work with NARO. In fact, they are the ones hosting the World Food Day this year, and they will be hosting it in Kabarole. I don't know that it's Kabarole or Fort Portal. Now, those two places seem to be the same. The district is Kabarole and Fort Portal is a city. Exactly. So they will be hosting us for this important event on the 16th at the NARO offices, the other side of Kabarole, Chembogo. I think it's called Chembogo. So they will be discussing these issues. How do we bring on board everybody? And I mean, we need also to discuss about the informal sector and food. Look at our street food vendors. They are feeding majority of us. In fact, the street and market food vendors are feeding all of us. But how are the standards in which they work? how have they been supported to make sure that the market, for instance, has sufficient infrastructure to keep our food safe? Is government concerned anyway? If yes, we can appreciate that. But if you go to the street vendors, what does the law say? Every vendor must be registered. Every vendor must be working in a designated place. So come to Kampala KCCA, have we designated places for vendors? If yes, those places which have been designated, because you are the authority that is designating them, you must make them suitable to host the food. Now the question is, do we have those posts? Are they designated? Are they safe to produce people's food? So those are the reflections we need to think about. In the markets, a lot of food waste or loss is happening because people do not have infrastructure. For instance, in Uganda, why should we produce so many tomatoes and they go to waste? Can you imagine that between 30 and 50% of our food is actually wasted? We don't eat it. It is produced, but is not consumed. In between there, we throw it away. Tomatoes, onions, fruits, we just dump them because infrastructure is not there. Just imagine you have your tomatoes or you have your milk and you don't have a cold room to keep them for long. So that whose role is it to give us, for instance, a cold chain room to preserve these foods? Government has to put in money to construct, because the government has constructed markets. We appreciate government for that. In different locations, we see markets, government markets. But you also go there were provisions of cold chain rooms, but there is no infrastructure. The rooms exist, but there is nothing. At least I've visited more than half of the markets in this country. So the rooms were constructed, but there is nothing. So they have converted many of them into kiosks. Yeah. But they were initially cold rooms. So we ask ourselves, by the way, what happened to the cooperatives? Because the cooperatives would put their money together and support government to buy their own infrastructure. But we don't see many of the cooperatives still function. Yeah. And so this is part of the advocacy. Can we bring back these cooperatives, farmer cooperatives? Maybe farmer cooperatives or marketers and whatever, they can put their money together and come up with their own systems, which can be regulated, of course, and we can have safe food, or we can even preserve food. We can reduce food waste and loss. But under what circumstances do we discuss these important facts? So I think that government has a role to play in making sure that our people have access to such infrastructure. I want to assure you that in Uganda, for instance, if we had a food crisis, you'll get surprised that we may all perish. Because we don't have, for instance, the food banks. Yeah. We don't have them. But constitutionally, we are supposed to have them. In fact, Objective 22 of the Constitution is very clear. The government shall ensure food security for its people. And one of the provisions, we are supposed to have food banks. That is why you see a lot of food waste and loss. People produce a lot of food, but they don't have where to put it. And yet, government would actually pick this food and store it somewhere to wait for the times of crisis, and then we are able to have food available at a cheaper cost. One of the reasons why people are sleeping hungry is the cost of food. Someone doesn't have sufficient money to buy actually a meal. Yeah. And yet, it could be subsidized if we had these kind of food banks by the government or whatever. And that is mandate of government. So I am going back to the working hand in hand. How do we work with government hand in hand to make sure that this kind of infrastructure exists? The government has constructed roads. We thank the government. But you realize that where the farmers are, we still struggle with transport. Someone produces eggs in the mountains, but by the time the eggs actually reach where the market is, it's a whole thing. So it is still an infrastructure issue. So what I'm trying to provide here is working hand in hand. How does government actually come in? It is to regulate, to come up with laws, to come up with policies, to come up with infrastructure, to come up with capacity building, to come up with awareness, to also employ people to do these things. If you're talking about nutrition, for instance, how many nutritionists are employed by government? You laugh if I tell you, because let me not say it here, because it is very, very sad. So the question is, how do we, for instance, recruit more nutritionists to go and save the situation in villages? At least every health center 3 should have a nutritionist to help on these cases. How about extension workers? How many are they now? So this is working hand in hand. That's what you're talking about in this whole thing. If you're talking about civil society, we also need to do our work. We need to create awareness. We need to advocate. We need to invest, etc. So every time you're talking about the food system, think about everyone who touches food, or everybody who is responsible at a particular point X in handling food, in ensuring that this food actually reaches to the people. So we need to work with them to make sure that we secure the future. I want to assure you that unless people have access to safe, nutritious, and healthy food, forget about the future.
Hey.
Yes, there is nothing like future. How will you go to the future when you are hungry? How will you go to the future, a better future, when you have a non-communicable disease, where you have a cancer coming from a food, where you have sold all your land to go to India for a surgical procedure, and even when you come back, you still go sick, and we just bury you. So there is no better future if there is no better food. that is the communication here. So how do we ensure that we work together to have this better food, which is going to lead us to a better nutrition, which is going to lead us to a better future? Every time people eat well, by the way, no diseases. The prevalence of disease is very minimal when people are eating healthier food. Secondly, government spends less money in treating diseases because people are not sick. So government is not worried. But as we speak now, the Cancer Institute is going to be smaller, and so government has to put in more money to actually construct more cancer institutes around the country, because cancer is going to rise if we don't do something around food. Diabetes is going to rise very soon. Government may even start thinking about having a diabetic kind of thing alone. Just like you can have a cancer institute, we may have a diabetic institute very soon, because everybody is suffering from diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. So we are likely to spend more money on treating non-communicable diseases that are coming from even a source that we know. That's where the problem is. If you know that something is going to kill you, why don't you deal with it? Really?
You know, Ugandans have a common saying that you might guard yourself against all those,
yes,
and you die of an accident.
No problem. In fact, there's no problem with that, because even the road safety has a campaign. We also need to maintain road safety so that as we are saving ourselves from food, the other side also we are safe. You see the problem of Ugandans. They get aware when they fall sick. I see them every day in the hospital. But before you fall sick, why don't you improve what is going to make you sick? This is where the problem is. One told me, but after all, we are going to die. Yeah, but you've died of what? You guys, you do not know how cancer pains. That's why you claim all those sorts of things. You guys, you do not know how diabetes is problematic. Do you know having diabetes and they have to cut off your legs just because of diabetes? Do you know having diabetes and you cannot see because to take away your sight? Do you know having diabetes and you are not able to enjoy anything? Do you know having diabetes and all your salary goes to medicine? I mean, do you understand that? Do you know having a cardiovascular disease and you're in your room and anytime you can just collapse and die? I mean, this is the context and the philosophy that our people have to have. It's a mindset shift. People, after all, we shall die. What have you died of? All of us will die, but what have you died of? Don't die of something that you know, because the pain is real. I have dealt with all these patients. I work with patients of diabetes. I work with patients of cardiovascular disease. I am supporting patients of cancer. I know the state. Just imagine a health worker being there and you reach a point and you cannot do so much. Do you know having to urinate through a tube? Do you know having to cut you and opening a human body and you start removing fat from the person, you start cutting? Do you know reaching a point of we cut you and we have nothing to cut? You guys, you stop these jokes.
Well, as we wind up this conversation, of course we have a category of people. These days, there is a new trend where people have, they choose to stay hungry because they want to cut weight.
Yes.
And someone says, no, I regulate my feeding schedule because I want to cut weight. I don't want to be fat anymore. So someone probably will have a meal, or they'll have a snack, or maybe a fruit, and for a day, and that is it. And they do the same for the rest of the week. Is this okay?
So it just depends. And of course, every time you're doing that, you have to be supported by a nutritionist or a dietitian to guide.
You just wake up.
Yeah, you don't just wake up, because you can also die. So the issue is that how do we manage weight? Okay? And of course, you see, this is what I'm talking about. By the time a person reaches that point, they have seen the frustration of being overweight or obese. And in fact, I love those ones because they are trying to come up with a mindset shift, okay? To change the way they have been doing things. So what happens is that with body weight, it is true that someone is weighing 100 kilograms, but literally they're supposed to be 65. So we need to cut off 35 kilograms in a few. So those ones, we always have provisions of how we work with them, and certainly they will reduce weight without any tablet, without anything. But as a nutritionist, I have to look at this person, what brought the weight. So we just reverse what brought the weight, and you're sorted. Without compromising your nutrition, but also without compromising your health, we strike a balance. So some of these things you do not need to be told on TV, because each one of us is different. So generally on TV we can give you general information and whatever, but every one of you has a specific way we can manage them. But please seek support from dietitians, from nutritionists, from at the health facilities. We are there. We are just there, supposed to support you. But people don't come until they are sick, unfortunately. So
better give us your closing remarks.
So I think that really we need to put our hands together. Okay. The media, the civil society, the consumers out there, everybody, Food Rights Alliance and other coalitions. We need to put our hands together, our resources together, to make sure that the food we are giving to our people is actually safe, is nutritious, is healthy, and is contributing to health of our people. By the way, that is the most important thing. And we need to be very well coordinated, making sure that we are coordinated and we don't, playing politics around. We need to save the society that we are actually serving. And I have to also tell you that the FAO, you've heard about FAO? Yeah. It will be celebrating 80 years of their service in the food, coordinating food and coming up with solutions on the World Food Day. So as we are commemorating the World Food Day, we also congratulate FAO because they have done a lot of amazing work to make sure that laws, policies, frameworks, technocrats and whatever, everything is in place to actually aid us to reduce food waste, to improve safety of the food, to improve nutrition situations, etc., etc. So I really call upon all of us to put our hands together. Join me. Whether you're in media or whatever, we have to fight for safe and nutritious food for all and by all. So I think that will be really the message of the day. And thinking that the consumers, now like you, a consumer, every time you serve food, finish it. Every time you leave food, it is immoral. Serve what you can actually consume and finish, because the moment you don't finish it, you're actually punishing somebody else who's going to sleep hungry. So you're going to be in the 2.1 billion and the 800 million people are busy there dying. So please serve what you can eat. Let us minimize consumption of food that is high in fat, that is high in salt, that is high in sugar. Those are actually deadly foods for us. Let us handle agrochemicals in a manner that is supposed to be. Let us make sure that the food we are eating is safe, nutritious and healthy.
Thank you so much, Bernard, and thank you so much to you, viewer. Wow. So we know, I think it's a tendency of very many of us, you go, they put food, everything, even but you can't tell the person serving that, no, that's too much. It's better you tell them that's too much than leaving food on the plate. I think, like you said, it's indeed immoral. Taking what you will not eat, and someone takes a lot of food and then they only eat meat and they take back the, also well, that is it we had for you today in Issues at Hand. Of course, next is coffee break, and of course we have a lot more to happen in the day, but don't miss our every Wednesday show called The Balt from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. every Wednesday. So we shall always be with you. From the entire team, Esther, Liz, Brinko, and very many others, we wish you a blessed day.
Issues at Hand